Hey folks, I'm Michael J. Penny and welcome to the 5-Paragraph Business Plan Tutorials. By now, you've looked through the materials and have got the book sitting in front of you. You've seen how the 5-Paragraph Business Plan is action-oriented, breaking big, huge plans down into bite-sized objectives. During this tutorial, we are going to talk about the execution paragraph, more specifically the how and the company, culture, and operational strategies. So right now I want you to follow along in the guidebook because you have already framed this up, this execution paragraph. In this situation paragraph, you talk about the problem opportunity statement. In the mission, you talk about the solution, the idea that you are looking to bring into reality. You have enticed the reader to want to continue on by providing a mission statement and directives that make somebody think, okay, how are you even going to go about doing this? Glad you asked. In the execution paragraph, you are talking about the how. It is easy to chase all the way down detailed rabbit holes, and that's fine depending upon the business model that you have. If you are an entrepreneur, or a business leader for that matter, the execution paragraph is where you are going to circle back to in order to find overall mission directives based upon the intent, the market, your critical vulnerability, and these are other aspects of the execution paragraph that we're going to start getting more in depth on. Right now in this tutorial, I just want to talk about the how associated with this paragraph, okay? You have already shared the intelligence that you've gathered through your market research. You've narrowed in on that problem. You've said, okay, this is a problem we're solving. If we're going to solve that problem, what would be the best solution to solve that problem? And then now you get to sit down and think about, okay, how are we going to be able to provide that? See, what you've done thus far is you have said, look, there's a population that's in need. It's a large population who needs what we could potentially offer. Here's the thing that would add the most value to that situation. Now, how the heck are we going to offer that to this target market, to this target population that's in need? We're going to have to construct a company, and we will have operational strategies built within that company. But if you're reading along with me in the book, you'll notice that I sandwich culture right in between company and operational strategies under the execution paragraph. What you've done in the mission statement and directive is you've established a code of ethics, a baseline method of how you're going to conduct yourself in what you consider a professional manner. You have created the fundamental foundation of your company culture. And that is something that you need to keep in mind throughout the remainder of the execution paragraph. This is something that your business leaders must always be cognizant of. Is my decision adding value based upon the values of the overall organization? And is that an organization that you want to be a part of? Which is going to make it a heck of a lot easier when it comes time to find team members. In the execution paragraph, specifically when we're talking about the company, the culture, and the operational strategies, what you're doing is you're identifying the big, huge pots of gold that are out there in a large scale sense. And this is when we start talking about the money side of things in a bigger way. What you do is you begin by identifying the largest sources of revenue and how much margin is available on each of them. That's a line directly out of the book so that you can be following along right there with me. What you're talking about here is the economics of the overall business, okay? This is the construct of the company and how you're putting it together. Is it an online business, a brick and mortar business? Is it a Main Street business? What are you doing in a large scale sense? The execution paragraph is going to break down the largest potential market in the sense of margin. So as we get going through this, you're going to hear the term center of gravity and critical vulnerability, and we'll reiterate this in later tutorials. What we're talking about is the biggest potential return on an investment that is out there. The largest amount of money to be made that is out there is your center of gravity. It is the center of gravity because demand is pulling. The mass of the need is pulling, gravitationally speaking, in a demanding sense. Okay, so that's the center of gravity. When you get into the meat and potatoes of things, we'll talk about the critical vulnerability, and that is, how are we going to make entrance into the market and then expand outside of that market? I've spoke about the biggest lies, right? Or the biggest lie in business. And this is something, I mean, you can see this all over, in a variety of different business publications, especially in entrepreneurship publications. But you always hear of larger companies who are constantly trying to look smaller, as if they've grown outside of their own market and monopolized so much outside of their market, but they're constantly trying to tell folks, hey, we're not a monopoly. Whereas if you're a startup, you're constantly saying, look, we're dominating the market. We're growing, we're growing, we're growing. Because you need that additional encouragement to swell. And by encouragement, I mean, it could be capital investment. It could be customers coming to you. It could be a variety of different things, but it's enticing saying that you're a small guy who is now dominating in a larger pond. So that's kind of the biggest lie in business. During the execution paragraph, we're going to be covering the action topics. Okay, so we're talking about not only how we're going to do this, but we're literally outlining all of the different action items that need to take place. This is by far the most in-depth paragraph in the 5-paragraph business plan. Yes, there are different subparagraphs and components and so on and so forth. If you haven't caught on by now, what I need you to understand is that we're always talking from a large-scale perspective, and then we incrementally narrow it down to an operational strategy, taking that large-scale, big, huge, massive goal and then breaking it all the way down. That is the overall simplicity in the 5-paragraph business plan. What is great about this, especially in an execution sense, is that you don't need to have all the answers right now. Okay? So if you're an entrepreneur and you're going, hey, I have no idea how I'm going to execute in all of these different operational strategies, that's totally fine. Even if you don't have a person to fulfill each individual role within the given team, that's fine. You have outlined and addressed that you have a need for someone to fulfill that role. So you have thought through, hey, at least you need somebody there, instead of you don't know what you don't know. That's the beautiful thing about the 5-paragraph business plan. That's why the operations order, in a military sense, we use it for large-scale operations all the way down to absolutely just tiny, small elements that are going to go out on a patrol. The point being is that executive leadership can create a big picture operational order and then hand it all the way down. And so in a business context, the executive leadership is filling out the execution paragraph, and they're doing so based upon the core values, the ethics, so on and so forth, that were found within the mission statement And the mission statement and the directives and the value that you're going to add is based upon the market research that you did in the situation paragraph, and so on and so forth. These key elements are something that executive leadership is going to keep an eye on. They're elements that the operational leadership needs to be cognizant of, because later on, and I encourage you, get the guidebook. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Later on, when you get down in the 5-paragraph business plan book, you're going to see how you use the MET-T template. Notice how I've said MET-T TSL. Okay, that's always for the executive leadership. Right? And later on, there's a flow chart in the book, and it shows how a business leader takes elements from the large executive leadership order, the executive leadership 5-paragraph plan, and then takes those elements and incorporates them into their own 5-paragraph business plan. And when they do that, the 5-paragraph business plan template and methodology is all exactly the same, but now they can highlight a specific objective that comes out of it. So what you've got to be able to do is find somebody who can fulfill that role, and then very easily just use this template to go and accomplish that objective. So even if you don't have somebody in that role right now, all you're going to need to do is just say, here's the guidebook, learn the methodology of the 5-paragraph business plan. It's very simple. This is what we're working on. And then you take that objective, and that is now your mission focus. So an operational leader or business leader would take the higher or the executive leader's mission or the internal objective within this execution paragraph, and then create their own 5-paragraph business plan. And it's one of those things where, wait a minute, we're all on the same plan, but we're doing different plans. And if you think about it in a sense of like a bracket, it's not trickling down information so much as it's keeping everybody on the overall same page of the overall outline, but they get to own each one of the different objectives within that greater plan as their mission. And when you're delegating authority to a leader, not a manager, a leader, and they have the ability to take charge of that mission, and now that mission is an objective found within your execution, they now get to own that. That is their command. That empowers your leaders. And that's the difference. That's what we're talking about here. Look, if you're following along and you want to get the templates, they're free. You can stay on this page while you're listening to these tutorials. All you got to do is scroll all the way down to the bottom and punch in your information. It automatically downloads. You won't be sent anywhere. There's no email. There's no nothing else. It downloads. So that way, at least you have the template. If you're following along in these tutorials, you're working through the template and you're saying, hey, you know what? I need some more help. That's totally understandable. When you complete a 15-minute phone call with one of our advisors, you will have a starting point to spring off of, as well as a more in-depth workbook. The workbook is going to have the templates, more of an outline, a greater amount of information in it, as well as the blank outlines that you have the ability to fill out. Now, I strongly encourage you, get the guidebook, go through the guidebook while you're listening to the tutorials, and it will give you a greater sense of the anecdotal material and the reason why we've constructed it in this way. What I like doing is following through the guidebook whenever we're doing these tutorials, so that you, as the individual reader who's following along, you have a better grasp on not only the sense of where we're coming from in the construct of the 5-paragraph business plan, but also I want you to understand we are always here for you. That's the point. We're always cross-talking. We're always collaborating. If you're out there and you're wondering, hey, where do I go next? Sign up for another phone call. That's totally fine. It's not just one and done. We want to continue to engage with you. We're building a community with this. Stick with it. This is an action-oriented business management tool for you, the executive leader, the entrepreneur, as well as you, the business leader, within the overall organization. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the 5-Paragraph Business Plan Tutorials. We covered the execution paragraph, just an intro to the execution paragraph as we start getting into the meat and potatoes of this document. And I wanted to keep this one a little bit shorter than the rest because we're going to go down a rabbit hole on this next tutorial. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Thank you for listening to the 5-Paragraph Business Plan Tutorials. Keep listening.